Now, the Labour Party is too weak to win the next election. That's according to a new report published by the left-wing think tank Fabian Society to mark the new year. It comes after Unite leader Len McCluskey appeared to distance himself somewhat from his previous support of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. The Fabian Society also warned that Labour are on course to win less seats than they have for over 80 years. Andrew Harrop, General Secretary of the influential group, spoke to me earlier.
We looked at the Labour Party's current position in the opinion polls, and if that was translated into a general election this year, the party would only get under 200 seats. And we also looked to see if things got even worse, because in the past, opinion polls have overstated the Labour Party's performance compared to what actually happens in subsequent elections. And if things go even worse for Labour, then it may be reduced to around 150 seats.
How much of this is down to the Labour meltdown in Scotland?
Labour's collapse in Scotland is a big part of this story. Because the party now doesn't have that huge swathe of Scottish MPs, it's much harder to get a UK-wide majority. Labour has to do a lot better in England and Wales to compensate. And at the moment, it doesn't look like Labour would be in a position to get that UK-wide majority. It would take the party beating the Conservatives in the popular vote by a very large margin to win a majority of MPs.
So there's a deep-seated malaise within the Labour Party, but many would say that this has been made worse by the current leader, Jeremy Corbyn. The Fabian Society, what view does it take on his leadership and what responsibility he must bear for all this?
A lot of these problems predate Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, and they are the nature of the 2015 election failure for the Labour Party. There is also the problem of the performance of Labour given the Brexit result, because Brexit has split the Labour coalition, with many former Labour voters supporting Leave, but many current Labour voters supporting Remain. But on top of that, Jeremy Corbyn's leadership is an issue. Every successful political party needs a popular leader, and at the moment, Jeremy Corbyn isn't popular with the general British public.
He's popular within the party. I mean, despite the fact that even Len McCluskey, the Unite Union leader, and of course one of Mr Corbyn's closest allies, said that the Labour leader may consider his position if the polls still look awful ahead of the next general election. But up to now, Jeremy Corbyn has clung on, and there's no real reason to believe he'll shift, given his tremendous popularity with Labour supporters and Labour Party members.
Jeremy Corbyn's got lots of support in the Labour Party. He's a Marmite figure who has huge popularity and affection with some people, but also turns off others. This report really isn't about Jeremy Corbyn personally. It's about the position of the whole Labour Party. And no one in the Labour Party, whatever their views on the current leader, wants the party to be reduced to under 200 MPs.
Andrew Harrop from the Fabian Society listening to that, and joining us now, former Labour Party spin doctor Lance Price, and Phil Kelly, Northern Ireland branch of the Labour Party. Lance, he's painting a pretty grim picture there, isn't he? You know, down to 140 seats. I mean, that's really Armageddon, isn't it?
Well, it's coming close to Armageddon. Fortunately, if we can see any hope in the situation, the electoral system, although it creates huge problems for the Labour Party, also saves it. If the Labour Party was down to 20-odd%, which is what the Fabian Society are extrapolating, and the Lib Dems were also on the same sort of figure, and so were UKIP, Labour would still end up with far more MPs than them and still be in opposition. So it's not Armageddon in the sense of being wiped out completely. But what they are saying, and I'm sure they're right about this, is that the Labour Party is a very, very long way from being in a position to challenge for power. And I think Andrew Harrop, who you were just listening to there, is also right to say that this isn't exclusively a problem for Jeremy Corbyn by any stretch of the imagination. Whoever was leading the Labour Party now will be facing an enormous challenge.
Yeah, but the thrust of it is really, isn't it, that he inherited a bad hand, Phil, and he's making matters worse. I mean, do you believe in Jeremy Corbyn?
Yes, I do indeed. Not so much Jeremy Corbyn as what he represents, which is actually placing in front of the electorate an actual alternative to the political failure that has encapsulated politics over 3 decades. So Andrew Harrop's had a huge platform with this report, which is a personal report that he's written. And the Fabians represents a very narrow viewpoint within the Labour Party.
But a much respected think tank.
You know, I would call them a political dead end, because if you look at the kind of social democratic mission statement they're putting forward, that is collapsing throughout Europe, and it's collapsing in America, it's collapsing throughout the Western world. People are looking out for a real alternative. If you look at what happened in the American election lately, the Clinton camp done all they could to derail the Sanders ticket, put themselves up against Trump, and they were rejected because they represented no change at all. Jeremy Corbyn, if people would get behind him within Labour, instead of doing the fortune-telling that Lance and that Andrew are engaging in, and actually got behind the policies and started pushing those out, because it is difficult to get that message out there with the Murdoch press. We need to start campaigning around a new
but even
vision
Len
for
McCluskey, you know, at 2 Len, you know.
No, I think you misinterpret that, and I think the Guardian actually had to change the headline on that article, because what Len was saying that, you know, is exactly right. It is not about Corbyn. We believe in the policies and the direction.
He's saying that if things are shaping up very badly pre-2020, if that's when the election happens, then he's got to think about his position, i.e., he's got to maybe consider
Absolutely,
resigning.
and what we need to do is try and make sure that we push that message and we help Jeremy Corbyn lead the Labour Party in the direction it needs to go. But if you look at what Len McCluskey is saying, it's exactly what we would all say, that the movement is bigger than the man. Okay. And I would also argue this,
let's just bring Lance in. I mean, Lance, what would your strategy be to make Labour more electable?
Well, I think Phil's absolutely right that the Labour Party has to be putting forward a radical alternative to the way in which the country's being led at the moment. And the Tories have got this stonking big lead in the opinion polls, and they're doing well in local council by-elections and so on and so forth. But they are a divided party. They seem to be lost as to where they want to take the country. So really, the Labour Party, if it got its act together, should be able to offer a radical, a very different alternative. I'm not arguing for a return to what was interpreted as Fabianism in the past, or Blairism, or anything like that. But it has to be predicated on strong leadership, and on patriotism, and on having somebody who, of course, the leader is the main sort of selling person for the party, the main person who has to go out there and sell the party's policies. That person has to be credible as an alternative prime minister. And I'm afraid, with the best will in the world, Jeremy Corbyn isn't that man.
And Phil, the other points that were made was that Labour's thrashing around on key issues like Brexit and migration, and you got UKIP targeting Labour in the north of England on this very issue, and that there isn't a clear-cut policy from Labour on this.
There's a real danger here, because if you listen to the voices on the Labour right, and if you listen to the kind of things that the Fabians were saying in that report, which is quite, if you read into it, it's quite mind-boggling, where they're saying they have to position themselves somewhere between Blair and Trump. I mean, Labour lost its soul under Tony Blair by moving towards a Tory-light policy, and it lost its identity.
Won a lot of elections.
Yeah, and also lost a lot of voters from 1997, and ultimately, as you were discussing earlier, lost Scotland completely. But what is worrying within elements of the Labour right, within the Parliamentary Labour Party and these right-wing think tanks, is we now seem to be moving towards a policy shift of saying, could we go UKIP light? I totally reject that. The people that have swollen the ranks of the Labour Party to support Jeremy Corbyn totally reject that vision as well. We have listened to the anger, the frustration, the insecurity that came out of the Brexit vote. Okay. But we don't put that on the scapegoats. That is not the politics of Labour.
Phil Kelly, Lance Price, thank you both very much indeed.